WWE's Attitude Era wasn't just a haven for pubescent new metal-loving teenage boys to revel in bloodshed, conflict, sexuality, and four-letter words. I mean, there wasn't much more than that, but it's not like 100% of the show was just those wonderful, wonderful things, right? Joking aside, the Attitude Era, with all of its heavy properties, proved to be immensely popular. The elixir to all of WWE's woes, giving them the power to punch down WCW in the most heated promotional battle wrestling had ever seen. Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Mick Foley, The Undertaker, Kane, D-Generation X, Sable, Chris Jericho, Vince McMahon, and so many others comprise a who's who of a period in which Monday nights on the USA Network weren't fit to be angrily deconstructed. Raw was always a talking point the next day. The televised insanity a talking point of many a playground the world over. As fans still to this day pine for something resembling the unfettered decadence of 20 years ago, we here at Cultaholic look back at that seminal time in professional wrestling with a few tidbits that even an Attitude Era defender might not have been aware of. I'm Sam from Cultaholic.com, and here are 10 things you didn't know about the Attitude Era. Join us! Number 10. Unclear Times. Take a survey sometime and ask wrestling fans exactly what moment the Attitude Era began, and their responses may surprise you. Not because they're so wildly wrong that they make game show bloopers seem reasonable, but because they might just be right. And you, in disagreeing with them, might also be right as well. The truth is, we all have a general idea of when the Attitude Era took place, but there have never been clearly defined dates for the period. The WWE 13 video game, which allows the player to recreate Attitude Era battles and moments, picks up with Shawn Michaels' August 97 heel turn. Others define Attitude as being when major innocence-free controversies brewed, be it the Austin-Pillman gun incident in November 96 or Montreal 1 year later. With Steve Austin as the kingpin of the Attitude Era, some point to WrestleMania 14, his coronation as WWE Champion, as the kickoff point. Or was it when Vince gave the out-of-character speech spelling out WWE's new promotional guidelines? Most concur that the era ended at WrestleMania 17 when Austin and McMahon shook hands to signal their shocking alliance, but as for where it started, that remains forever vague. Number 9. Nailed to the Gun. Previously mentioned was an incident on the November 4th, 1996 edition of Monday Night Raw, one which contrasted starkly with the TL Hoppers and Aldo Montoyas of the world. Weeks after injuring Brian Pillman's ankle, Steve Austin threatened to show up at the Pillman compound, where his former Hollywood Blondes partner was lying in wait with a loaded handgun. The violent image played out with Austin assaulting persons outside of Pillman's home before smashing his way through the door. A wide-eyed Pillman then aimed the gun as the screen went static. Monday Night Raw has been on the air for over 26 years, and this was the closest it may have ever come to being outright cancelled. According to the book Sex, Lies and Headlocks, USA Network founder and then CEO Kay Koplovitz wanted WWE's contract with the network reviewed. McMahon had to meet with suits at the USA Network offices, Koplovitz included, and was read the riot act over not only the gun incident, but other recent unsavory goings-on in WWE. He was ordered to revert back to a kid-friendly show, but despite his willingness to apologize, he obviously didn't bend from his new direction. Number 8. Secret Blood Pact. If you were to personify the Attitude Era in one frameable image, you might go with that of Steve Austin, rivulets of blood streaming down his groaning face at WrestleMania 13. He was a made man in defeat, and his blood-soaked predicament played a major role in elevating him to genuine stardom. What's funny about that moment is that only Hart and Austin knew there was going to be blood. WWE still forbade blading at the time, and the two wrestlers covertly agreed that Austin needed to be busted open for the finish to have maximum impact. In fact, Hart did the cutting himself, sneakily cutting Austin's eyebrow with a razor mere feet away from Vince on commentary, and McMahon didn't even notice a thing. According to Brett, Vince even questioned both men about it the next day, but they each independently explained it away as hard-way juice. WWE ended up adorning the "'Cause Stone Cold Said So" VHS release with Austin's Crimson Mug months later, so clearly they came around to it. Number 7. The Emperor's New Gimmick. The phrase happy accident denotes a situation in which disaster or unintended circumstances beget the ultimate in silver linings. And McMahon knows a happy accident when he sees one, as the man portraying himself as a benevolent commentator on camera became public enemy number 1 after the Montreal screwjob. The waves of hatred that crashed down in his direction as a result of his hand in double-crossing Bret Hart led to him becoming a number 1 heel and the ideal foil for world champion Stone Cold Steve Austin. Austin vs. McMahon was born from the ashes of Bret's exodus. Ironically, McMahon believed that post-Montreal the fans would see him as the hero. He felt that he did what he had to do to get the belt off his outgoing champion, especially with that man headed to the financially powerful rival promotion. After the infamous interview with Jim Ross in which Vince coldly stated Bret screwed Bret, McMahon thought he would be seen as the babyface. And he obviously thought wrong, but given how he was able to mold that situation into a brilliant character turn, he probably didn't mind guessing incorrectly just this once. Number 6, now you know. The Attitude Era was really the catchphrase era, as every major WWE star had signature lines and phrases that came standard with their every appearance. Bottom lines, candy asses, nice days, resting in peace, and the suggestion that your opponent, suck it, were echoed by tens of thousands of fans weekly. Road Dogg Jesse James knows how important a catchphrase can be, greeting the audience with the hearty, "Oh, you didn't know, your ass better call somebody," during the gaps in his opening theme song riffs. Road Dogg later revealed that the phrase, which is forever etched into the pro wrestling lexicon, was born out of a simple running gag between he and Brian Lee, who at the time worked as chains in DOA. They used to jokingly say, "You better fax somebody," as a play on "you better ask somebody," with fax morphing into call over time. Then one night, Dogg told Lee he was going to say the phrase during his entrance as a gag that only the two of them would really ever get. But before long, everybody was in on the joke, and the phrase is forever identifiable with Road Dogg. Number 5, box office draw. Just as the Hulk Hogan Mr. T connection helped raise WWE's profile in the mid-80s, another pairing of a bald-headed babyface and a tough guy celebrity did the same for the company in 1998. Steve Austin and Iron Mike Tyson's conflict stirred up a media frenzy, and was the real draw for WrestleMania 14 in 1998. Tyson switching allegiances to count Shawn Michaels down in the main event made for even better news copy, with the boxing great raising Stone Cold's arm. The price for Tyson's services varies depending on the source, with some saying that he pocketed $3 million for his appearances between the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, and others say $4 million. Nonetheless, that was a pretty hefty price tag for a company that in the previous fiscal year lost more than $6.5 million. McMahon forcibly pushing Bret Hart out of WWE was in large part due to his regretting the 20-year contract he'd signed off on, so WWE was in some financial peril at the time. But the gamble paid dividends as Tyson brought many eyeballs to the WWE product. And in the 98-99 fiscal year, WWE grossed a whopping $56 million. Number 4, don't call it a comeback. Let's talk about ratings, shall we? Former WCW shot caller Eric Bischoff co-hosts a podcast with Conrad Thompson called 83 Weeks, named for the streak of Nitro ratings victories over Raw between June 96 and April 98. The run ended when a Steve Austin challenge to a non-wrestler Vince McMahon swung the viewing audience WWE's way on April 13th of that year, giving Raw the victory on the night. From there, WWE began to take clear lead in the pro wrestling arms race. But it wasn't a complete takeover. Nitro beat Raw in the ratings the following week thanks to Goldberg's challenging of WCW champion Hollywood Hogan. Somewhat surprisingly, there was a 6-week stretch in August and September 98 when Raw didn't once beat Nitro. Granted, 2 of those weeks Raw was preempted by US Open tennis coverage, but Nitro did manage to hold Raw off for a bit, including for the SummerSlam Go Home show thanks to Ultimate Warrior debuting on Nitro. It didn't take long for Raw to grab a consistent lead, however, but Nitro was still scratching and clawing even after their streak of 83 weeks ended. Number 3, how many weeks? So if Bischoff has a podcast called 83 Weeks celebrating his uninterrupted dominance over McMahon's Monday Night Juggernaut, what could a McMahon podcast be called if it were to have a similar title? Well, the last time Nitro won head-to-head in the ratings was October 26, 1998, thanks to WCW re-airing the Goldberg DDP World title match from Halloween Havoc the night before, which most fans missed due to the show running into overtime. When Raw won the battle the following week on November 2nd, they won them all from that point forward. Counting only instances in which Raw and Nitro both aired on Monday nights, Raw won 120 consecutive weeks from November 2nd, 98 until the bitter end on March 26, 2001. Raw reached an 84 win streak, shattering the record on June 19, 2000, 8 nights after Goldberg turned heel in WCW for some reason. So let Conrad know that if you want to hear him hosting 120 weeks with Steve Blackman. We'll never know if we can get it unless we ask. Shy Ben's getting out. Number 2, to even greater heights. WrestleMania 15 isn't exactly what you'd call an artistic achievement, especially with the benefit of hindsight. But at least it ended well, with Stone Cold triumphing over The Rock to become WWE Champion for the third time. By this point, WWE had turned WCW into its personal Washington Generals, and there seemed to be no signs of stopping the McMahon Empire. WrestleMania 15, while imperfect from a wrestling standpoint to say the very pissing least, still represents a landmark night in company history. The 15th WrestleMania was, at the time, the most bought WWE pay-per-view in history, raking in 800,000 buys for WWE's flagship event. The previous record holder for most purchased WWE pay-per-view occurred a decade earlier, when WrestleMania 5, where those mega powers exploded in every manner except literally, did 767,000 buys. But WrestleMania 15 wouldn't have 10 years to reign, as the two subsequent Manias topped its mark, with WrestleMania 17 becoming the first WWE pay-per-view to top 1 million buys. And in my opinion, no show deserved that honor more. And number 1, the ecstasy of swapping gold. Let's agree with WWE 13 and say that SummerSlam 97 marked the start of the Attitude Era, while WrestleMania 17 marked its end for the sake of argument in this final entry. That's a less than 4-year period of time, but it was one that felt like it could never end. And in that period, titles changed hands frequently in WWE, like abnormally so. Everybody held the European title at least 14 times in the Attitude Era, including Stevie Richards, Steve Buscemi, Steve from Blue's Clues, and Steve the Pirate. That's how crazy things got. The WWE Championship in the Attitude Era, as defined by the parameters given, changed hands in the ring 25 times in that 44-month stretch, with 11 different men holding the gold. From 1963 up until the start of the Attitude Era, the belt had changed hands 35 times, or roughly once a year. Meanwhile, during the Attitude Era, it was changing hands 5 or 6 times a year, making those weekly TV shows a little bit more must-see, since anything was possible. And that includes Steve Buscemi scoring the big upset on D'Lo Brown in order to proudly represent Helsinki.
Thanks for watching. Let us know what you think in the comments below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter at Cultaholic. You can check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you like what we do here at Cultaholic, you can check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/Cultaholic. And no matter what you do, don't ever forget to hit subscribe and join us.